तो in the meantime, जब तक सब लोग आते हैं, we can actually, I think we can discuss anything that was a problem in test. Any question that you guys had any problem with? I think overall it was, except the last question that you couldn't solve because of the image issue. Otherwise, all was quite clear, right? Any feedbacks on that? Perfect. So, before I go to today's class, I wanted to just show you what's the performance of everyone. So, in that sense, we deserve a congratulations because all of you have passed. There was uh, no one less than 50%. So, congratulations, well done. Abhi, this level was basic to intermediate level for test. It may go to a bit higher in subsequent tests, so be ready for that. तुम लोगों का average score for the class was 19 out of 25, so quite good. What I wanted to see was if anyone has any issues with any of the questions, but since we can actually also do one thing, we can go through very quickly anything that was that had some issues. So I have some statistics with me. MS Teams provide that. So the first one question that was about fly ash, I think quite a good amount, 75% almost students were correct. So the point in fly ash question was the natural slopes question point. That made the statement untrue. These are not natural slopes. Fly ash ponds are man-made slopes, and these are generally made when coal is burnt in a power plant, and fly ash, basically a residue, has to be stored somewhere. So we discussed in our first class, we discussed this, how different types of slopes are there and which are the uh, natural and man-made slopes, right? So fly ash is a man-made slope. It's not a natural slope. That's why the question was false. Okay, let's keep them side by side. I think that will be easy. Which questions were the most problematic? We'll see. So next question was about uh, what is the scope of slope engineer? I think this was quite obvious, except that diversion of the rivers and water channels. I think all things were in our scope. So as an engineer, we have to see all these things: stabilization, understanding of the statistics and dynamics, and monitoring. So everything comes. This option was just given as as a false option, but yeah. So the work of diverting rivers and water channels is not for slope engineer. It's for the civil engineers who are working that side. And a good example is if you are aware of Umrair mine, there is a mine in Western Coalfields Limited, Umrair mine. It used to have a big this drag line, and a drag line was used to basically put the overburden material from one place to another. and a river went through nearby. So what they did was because initially the river was going through the property of the mining lease property, so they diverted that river uh, for basically for working purpose. Slowly and gradually, what happened was the river actually started getting through the main mining area as the depth increased, and some improper control or something happened that the base on which the drag line was established basically got weakened up due to that river, and the full base failed along with the drag line even. So that was an interesting case where rivers and channels were also involved, but that's not a strictly a work of slope engineer or in that sense, in general sense that. So that was one. This question I think most of you got. What is the natural angle that fragmented material takes when they are dropped? So angle of repose is that. We studied about that, why angle of repose is what it is, which are the factors that are affecting angle of repose, right? And then we had adhesion cohesion question. The point was attractive forces between similar particles. I think some whoever got confused might have been due to the this figure. So this figure, what we learned was between cohesion is between similar, adhesion is between dissimilar. Very easy. So most of you got that correct. This was which are the factors that do not affect shear strength, and this does not part was very important. That's why I boldened it up. Uh, it's basically very simple. This is the Mohr-Coulomb criteria, and we see which are the variables. So sigma, theta, and c are the three things that are affecting the shear strength. So those are the things that should not be in as correct options, right? So the only correct option is shear stress, which doesn't directly is changing the shear strength of any material. So that was the correct option. Uh, I think some of you got confused in friction as well. So friction is here as this tan phi. So tan phi is basically the friction component. So do remember that. Next, this was the stability of the slope, which does not which does not affect the stability of slope. I think very simple question it was. So I think most of you have got this. So those who have not, it's local wind speed, even though may have an effect of erosion on erosion for a long time. In a long term, it may erode the slopes, but in our scale of temporal scale or the time scale that we work on, local wind speed is not considered for our slope stability issues. So other properties like geology, hydrology, geometry, all these things are much more, what we say, sensitive. So in that sense, uh, the last option was incorrect. So, or the correct option in that sense, right? Next was the gap. So the gap or the separation between two rock sections that form a joint is called. Now, I think many of you were actually confused in this. So let me show you what actually it means. We discussed this once. What is spacing? Spacing is actually the gap between two sets of joints, right? If these two joints are there, so the distance between these two joints is spacing. But that's not what the question wants. The question is the gap or separation between two rock sections that form a joint, right? So it basically is wanting to know what is this gap called. So this gap is we discuss it is called aperture. Aperture is basically the middle lying area. It can be open. So then we talk about aperture. If it is closed or filled, we talk about width. And it can be filled, it can be not filled based on what kind of joint it is. So this one is called the aperture of a joint. between the two rocks. So that's what the question asked. So I think 60% of you have got that. So that is good. So I think this a little bit might be confusing, spacing and aperture. So that's the difference we have to know. That spacing is between two joints and aperture is a single joint gap that it creates due to that discontinuity being there, right? Internal angle of friction is a material property. Do not confuse it with friction or the friction angle. It is a bulk property again of material, but some people got it confused with geometry. It's not that. There is a difference between internal angle of friction and any other friction that we talk about. So I think we'll cover that up later on, right? And what next? This was, so which of the following factors does not affect the overall slope angle of the pit? So for that, a very simple exercise was this, how we calculate the open pit overall slope angle. So we had to know about bench width, bench height, bench angle, right? Ramp or the berm width, all these things we have to find out, right? So that's why drilling length here was an incorrect option. So drilling length, even though in some cases bench height or other cases will be dependent on drilling length, but it's not strictly a factor on which we can calculate the overall slope angle of the mine or the open pit. So the drilling length was the correct option. Berm width is the bench width or the difference in these the horizontal things that are there here. Ramp is also one of the factors. So berm width was that. Bench height, you are aware, right? And bench angle also. That's quite clear, right? So this was about how we calculate the overall slope angle. Quite simple in this case. We can completely predict the stability of the slope just by judging the orientation. So we have seen these many times that apart from orientation, there were so many factors that were there that are basically affecting about the joint itself, apart from what to talk about slope stability, right? So just the orientation basically means at what angle the joint is, like dip and the dip angle and all. So just the orientation won't be sufficient. There are friction, there is a spacing, there are so many other things. So that's why we can completely predict the stability by judging the orientation is incorrect. So that's why it was false. So false was the correct answer here, right? And next was the material does not allow water. So in this case, what we have to remember something we learned about porosity and permeability. Uh, what kind of material can be based on what kind of pores are there inside and how connected they are, right? So a material can be like non-porous, a totally non-porous material that doesn't have pores at all. So there will be no place from which any fluid or water can pass through, right? Then there can be a substance that have these pores, but these are not connected, like our sandstone or uh, uh, similar material that are porous in nature, but these pores are not interconnected that well, right? And what else? Then there can be porous and permeable materials. Permeability, as soon as we connect these pores, these becomes the material becomes permeable. Basically, anything that can permeate or pass through. So these combinations of materials can be there. So that we had to remember in order to answer this question completely. So the material that does not allow water to pass through can be one of these. So which of these cannot allow pass through? Whichever is not permeable. So the options which have non-permeable in them will be correct answers. This option, the last one, non-porous and permeable, this material actually doesn't exist. There is no material that will be highly porous, highly permeable, or will allow any material to pass through, but is not porous, except in case when we artificially drill holes in that. Then it becomes again a non-porous material can also become permeable, but again that is not a natural material anymore, right? So non-porous and permeable, the last option here is this kind of natural material doesn't exist basically. So the two top portion which were non-permeable options, these were the correct answers, right? So quite quite a good number have already answered that. So good. And the image portrays. So image actually was this one. If I think some of you guys didn't get to see this image, the image that was in the question was on your left side of the screen that is being shown. So this basically, we know this is a toppling failure, right? The rocks are basically going to topple in the cases where the angle of the discontinuity is against the angle of the face, right? And it should be such that the separation takes place between these rocks or the slabs that are being formed, right? But because many of you didn't see this image, so we gave bonus points to all of you. So this was marked as correct for everyone. But next time we will see what to do about the images thing if any problem like that persists, right? So this was toppling. It's still 39. I think good number already had the correct answer, but everyone else also got the point for that. Which of the following is not an effect of saturation in soil? So this was once we studied about how the hydrology works. So the options were quite clear, but a little bit we have to read it carefully basically. So increase in its effective weight, effective unit weight, that was because the pores of the material gets filled with water and the unit weight of the whole material when it's saturated basically increases, right? Decrease in its cohesion decreases, as we have seen so many questions when we did about the factor of safety calculation, right? The cohesion was supposed to decrease when rains happen. So it be it soil, be it like a fractured material, be it the discontinuous material, any loose components generally will lose cohesion, so their values will decrease. Increase in hydrostatic pressure, that is most of the times true because generally drainage is not allowed, and since we are talking that saturation has already happened, so we have assumed that the drainage has not happened basically. And when the drainage has not happened, the hydrostatic pressure has been built up. The head of hydrostatic pressure will be calculated by the height of the new water level. So these kind of experiments or these kinds of simulations we did in when we were doing the hydrological part in finite element analysis or even in limit equilibrium analysis. So both of these cases we have seen. Increase in its friction angle. Now this doesn't happen. With saturation, there might be a decrease in friction due to maybe water being acting as a lubrication or a lubricating agent, but it can't increase the friction angle unless some very special conditions are there, like a cement kind of material is already present in dry state, and with water it reacts to basically make a final cement concrete type of structure. That can happen, but in general cases, when we say about soil and saturation, increase in friction angle doesn't happen, right? So that was the correct answer. Those were all the effect of saturation. So that's why increase in friction angle, right? Mohr Coulomb failure envelope, very clear. This was the Mohr Coulomb failure envelope we saw between shear stress and normal stress, right? And that's what the second option said, the portion of the shear stress versus normal stress curve under which the rock will be safe or stable. So this was the portion under which the rock will be stable. It is defined by this Mohr-Coulomb equation, that is C plus sigma tan phi. So any stress ratio or the condition of effective stress and shear stress, normal stress and shear stress, if it falls within this envelope, it is safe. Otherwise, outside this envelope, it is unsafe. So that's what the purpose of the Mohr-Coulomb failure envelope is. Similar to the stratigraphic envelopes we discussed in details, right? Failure envelopes. In those cases, we were deciding that which stratigraphic envelopes will cause failure. Here, Mohr-Coulomb's envelope basically means this one is safe, and anything outside that becomes unsafe, right? Other options were just some other things. Condition where the rock fails under tension only, that is a tensile stress, that is different. Boundary of stress strain curve of rock where failure does not happen. Again, stress strain curve we are not talking about here, and condition in which failure happens if the thickness of the sample is more than its length. A very, very different condition here. So nothing in relation with Mohr-Coulomb's failure criteria. So that was the second option was correct. I think almost all of you except 1 or 4 have answered this correct. So quite good work. Which of the following are not Atterberg limits? Atterberg limits we discussed quite briefly, but we discussed what they are and what they are called. So liquid limit is the part where after a certain water content, basically the soil or whatever material we have starts behaving as a liquid. Plastic limit was something like the limit after which it starts behaving as a plastic behavior. Wherever it's a stress strain curve or going straight, right? So that was plastic limit. Shrinkage limit was a point after which, or if you basically stopped removed the water content, it won't decrease any further. So any shrinkage that was happening due to the removal of water content, if you're drying, it doesn't affect the volume change. So that point basically is called the shrinkage limit. And fluid limit is not relevant here, but these three are called Atterberg limits. And generally this kind of curve are made, and these all tests for all these limits basically are very, very different. So a single test for all are not done, and all these three values are calculated by different tests. So we'll be discussing this in upcoming lectures, how these Atterberg limits are calculated. What are these? So fluid limit was the incorrect choice, and quite good number have all again chosen the correct one. This everyone got. Factor of safety is defined as strength over stress. Perfect. Each and every one of you have that answer, so let's move ahead. The intercept of the equation on y-axis for Mohr-Coulomb failure criteria. Just remember this when we were seeing Mohr-Coulomb failure criteria, right? Tau equals to C plus sigma tan phi. Anything on the slope of this line, it basically gives us friction, right? Internal friction. C gives us the intercept here. So the intercept on y-axis is cohesion. So that was the question about. So friction is the slope, but the intercept is cohesion. That's the difference. Okay, so the correct answer was cohesion. And in the next one, choose whichever statement is correct, even though it was a multiple choice, but the answer was only one. The correct answer was only one. Somehow, I think this should not have been multiple choice. But anyways, this we were discussing when factor of safety was being taught about, right? So factor of safety 1 is always safe. That is incorrect, right? 1.0 is basically a critically safe point. and it's almost never considered safe in most of the cases. It basically indicates a condition where the stresses are just equal to the strength. Any change in stresses will cause a failure, so it is very critically safe. So it is not always safe in that case, right? Factor of safety of 1.2 is considered safe for most of the applications. That is again incorrect, because as per the correct answer, that was the required factor of safety for ensuring safety ensuring safety varies with different applications. So for every other applications, we were discussing this about mines, we were discussing it about dams, we were discussing it about civil structures, right? So for everyone, there is a different critical factor of safety that they consider it as the minimum requirement, right? So that's what the correct option was. The last option basically said the mining operations being dynamic requires much higher factor of safety as compared to stationary structures like dams. That was actually the opposite. Mines basically are dynamic, but they require very less factor of safety due to the same reason, they being dynamic. And uh, as compared to stationary structures which do not move. So dams, roads, these require much higher factor of safety, right? So this, I think we discussed in one of the classes. So the correct answer was the third one. Uh, okay, daylighting. I think most of you got it, but the condition is the condition of sliding that we saw in many examples. But the condition is very simple. When the angle of the discontinuity is less than the angle of the slope, and it is inclined towards the slope, that is the condition of daylighting. The joint is inclined towards the face of the slope with slope dip greater than the joint dip. So slope dip, the dip of the slope is greater than the joint dip. So do remember that. If you have any confusion about daylighting, daylighting basically is something like when daylight is basically when these joints get exposed to the slope. So the only condition when they will be exposed to this slope will be when the slope dip greater than joint dip. So when this angle is greater than the joint angle, then only these joints will be exposed on the slope. Otherwise, they will either be inside or on top. So the condition of exposure is called the daylighting. So in that ways, you can remember that. Other options were clearly visible during daylight. That's just for the namesake. Slope dip is always less than joint dip. That's the opposite of what the correct answer is, right? And the joint is inclined against the slope. That is a condition of toppling failure. So that's not it. So this was the correct answer. And finally, in MCQs, we had for an idealized sliding planar failure, the factor of safety in terms of forces can be written as very simple. Resistive force by driving force. No need to get it confused by the opposite one. So I think like most of you got it. So that was correct. Resisting force by driving force. That was it. So I think MCQs in that ways, apart from few confusing terms, I think most of these were very simple. I would have liked that all of you would have got these, but yeah, that's okay. Uh, next, we had three numericals. So in this, I think for the first numerical, that was just the putting of the values in that one. So it was quite easy, and it required just the use of the formula. So a road slope has sliding plane angle 55 degrees, uh, effective failure block weight 750 tons, cohesion 90, friction 35, and area of contact 50. CA plus sigma tan phi. Uh, and that was on top, and Nietzsche what we had. So W's just directly applying the formula of CA, W cos xi tan phi upon W sin xi. So we had all the values given 50. Just we had to convert the weight of the block 750 tons into kilonewtons. So that we have to take care. And all other things were directly given. We just applied to the formula 1.3199 and the option was 1.32. Most of you got it. So anyone who didn't, this was the way we do it. Second option, I don't know where many people got it. Some confusion was there between these values 1725. I couldn't find out where you went wrong with this. Was the correct answer was basically 332.58 or 3326. But any answer that is close because of approximations, I have given it as correct. So 3328, 3323, 3325, all are marked as correct. So those were there, and the concept was very simple. Again, we were working on this condition of our work. So we basically wanted to know which was the angles of the what was the angle of T with respect to horizontal. We had to find out, and we had to find out finally what will be the T if the factor of safety was 1.5. So area was given again, weight of the block again was given. Even in this, if you might have seen the question, this whole starting part was the data that was given here was not required at all. So it was not used. Mine slope with overall 75 degrees and pit depth of 150 meter, it was not used here. Actually, I wanted to create a bigger question, but I don't think time was there. So and 3 points we couldn't. So this was just an extra information. Couldn't even be, was not used in anywhere. So for solving it, we had area given as 100 meters square, right? We had weight that was given as 600 tons. So that was converted into kilonewtons. Angle of sliding, it was given, and friction angle was given, and I think most of the things were already given, except that the cohesion was given as 10,000 newtons. So we have to convert it into 10 kilonewtons. And with this was important that that bolt, where is the bolt? The rock bolting is proposed and the bolt is perpendicular to the sliding plane. So we had to basically convert the angle, bolt angle with respect to plane to bolt angle with respect to horizontal. And that was simple, right? Because it is 90 degree with respect to the plane, which is inclined at 45 degree. So that that was easily done. And that's why the factor of safety was, when we kept the factor of safety as 1.5, the T was found to be 3326, right? So the answer was 3326. All close ones were marked correct. The last one, which most of you didn't get it, and I think if image issues were there, it was difficult a bit. But this was the image. Let me zoom this one. So we did this on the A side. We did the derivation in the assignment. So and the B one we already took as an example in our class. So nothing else was there. We just had to basically, these two conditions are given and we have to find the factor of safety. U, V, main thing was to calculate the U and the V. In the A case, V as usual was rho g HW into HW into 0.5, that is half into rho g H, that was the head, into the, so half base into height. The base basically of this triangle will be rho g HW, that is the head, and height is HW. So that was the V, that's how we calculated it, right? And the second was, in last time we remember we calculated it as a half base, that is rho g HW into height, that was A, right? So for B case, that was easy, half rho g HW into A. But for this case, basically this, in place of transforming from a triangular, it has transformed because being closed at one end, the pressure has increased. So increase in pressure has basically made that this part is rho GH, similar to this, but the effective head at this point, the last point, will increase. And if we say, let's see, if we say this portion till here, so this one is the additional head that was added, right? So this portion will be, this is assumed as A. So this will be A sine xi p. That's the only thing that we had to do. So for this, for calculating the whole force, this was just half sum of parallel sides into height. So half sum of parallel sides was rho GHW plus sum of parallel sides of this one was rho GHW plus this head. So this head was rho GHW plus rho into G into A sine xi pi. Right? That's the whole uh, the vertical side of it, and divide it and for area into the height, so that will be A. So half rho G HW into A, that was the whole calculation. And finally we could get the U, this one. And then we just had to do this part. And once we had that, all the values were given. A was given as 30 in the question, 30 meters square, right? Weight was given as 800 tons, that was converted into kilonewtons. Angle of slide was 50, friction was 30, cohesion was 110, and rho g, the value of rho g basically was given, the unit weight is given as 9.81 kilonewton per meter cube. So the value of rho into g was already given. So basically it is like 1000 into 9.8 newtons per meter cube. That was 99.8 kilonewtons per meter cube. Rho g. Okay, H is given. So case 1 we had found UV, case 2 we had found UV, and factor of safety. The answer was 0.56 and 1.26. So 1.22. Sorry. Yeah. I think what I found. Let me check. Yeah, 1.12. This is wrong. So 1.12 was the correct answer for the second case, and 0.56 was the correct answer for the first case. That was it for the problem, but we anyways, because most of you had complained for this image, we didn't count it, so that is not taken in the marking. And but that's how this problem was done. Any questions till now? So everyone saw their results? Everyone happy? Yeah.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I have some doubt regarding the berm. Berms are generally the catchments that are used to catch the falling rocks from one bench to another. And another one definition of berm is there is like it is in the bench floor, like the end of the bench floor. It is there for safety purposes. So which one is correct, sir?
So when we talk about berm, in mining terms, berm is also defined as when we leave the horizontal spacing while going for the different benches, uh, which we have also known as berm width or bench width in some cases. Let me show you if I have some images of that. Uh,
So for safety considerations of a bench, we give muck pile into the end of the bench, right? So what is that called?
When we give a safety pile, right? For
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah, I also don't remember that. What is it called? Uh, Let me find out. I also forgot somehow. Yeah, let me find
Okay,
out
sir.
that. Maybe I am also slipping something. It is, we used to call it barrier or ramp barrier or something, but there will be a technical term for sure.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, let me find out and get back to you.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else? Negative marking. Yeah. So for every 5 minutes, it reduced 1 mark. For every 10 minutes, it reduced 2 marks, and so on. So for 1 minute, I gave a grace because I understood 1 minute was okay. But for others, it was already deducted, so didn't do anything that time. But we have to do something about that, so that negative marking we can avoid later on. So who got how many of you got negative marking due to time? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. 1 minute. Yeah. So yeah, that was the condition, because submitting late was an issue. So that's why it was coded in that uh, beyond beyond 1 minute. Actually, anything more than 30 minutes, it was cutting 1 mark, and anything beyond 10 minutes, 0 to 5 minutes, 1 mark deduction was there. 5 to 10 minutes, 2 marks deduction was there. Something like that was there, and it was going on. But I think most of us did submit inside the timeline of 10 minutes grace period, so that was done. I removed few because in 1 minute time grace period could have been given, so I actually removed that. But other places it was not done. So yeah, what to do? So it was due to we next time what we can do is either we can auto submit it so that it submits in 30 minutes, but that also won't be good, right? Submitting it automatically might be a problem. So that's why in program it has basically has an option of uh, allowing you to submit it late, but some time penalty is there. तो क्या कर सकते हैं? Time penalty तो रहेगी. Otherwise, one option is there that next time we can give it option of auto submitting after 30 minutes. Uh, that also can be there. Then no penalty will be there, but then there can be an issue that you might have not completed. So बताओ जैसा भी सही रहे. Next time we can plan that out, because we have to कोई time तो देना ही पड़ेगा. It has to be a
पेनल्टी का अगर
sorry. Yeah, Vishal.
warning आ जाए तो
Vishal. Hello. क्या करा जाए?
सर वार्निंग आ जाए तो लास्ट टाइम टाइम का पता चला
I cannot hear. को क्या आ जाए तो टाइम को पता चल सकता है? I think some
Sir, he's
voice
saying about warning. Any
warning.
warning
अच्छा
that
warning आ जाए. वार्निंग आ जाए तो ये तो बात सही है। उसमें ऊपर व्हेन यू गिव द एग्जाम इज देयर एनी टाइम दैट इज देयर, वहाँ टाइम लिखा हुआ आता है क्या?
नो सर।
नहीं। Sir, in real examination we'll have invigilators to remind. That is true. That is true. I understand. Actually वही दिक्कत है कि real time invigilation, if I have to do, I have to ask you all to be present in the class, and I felt that is not good. मतलब तुम लोग भी डिस्टर्ब होते, तुम लोगों की बैंडविड्थ भी it might have been an issue, और that's why I didn't want कि सब लोग रहो, but if you guys want then we can arrange that, but it won't be like few of you remain and few of you don't, so I have to do it for everyone. So that's what you can see whichever option is good. See, understand this also, if uh, it automatically submits after 30 minutes and you are caught in surprise, you might not be able to mark questions which you might be solving in the meantime. एक issue ये लग रहा था मेरे को, so I didn't do the auto submission part. Second part was कि if I would have directly invigilated, so कर सकते हैं, but then it might be an issue for some of you because you have to do two things at once, right? So bandwidth and all, internet connectivity का कहीं problem हो, एक वो है। और तीसरी चीज़ about a warning, I can give only in invigilation, but इसमें I don't think we have an option to program a warning. I'll find out, but mostly it is not. Anyways, तो if you guys are okay with me sitting, I was anyways there, right? Many of you were there for 1 hour. But if you guys are okay with all of you being in class and simultaneously giving the test, then it's okay with me, if that is convenient for you. For me, I thought it might not be convenient for you guys. Disturbances भी होते हैं, right? When we talk and all. तो देखो नेक्स्ट टेस्ट में अगर ऐसा करना है तो वी हैव टू मेक सम अरेंजमेंट फॉर दैट, दैट्स व्हाई what I thought was a good option was just to time the negative marking and allow you to submit late also a little bit. So वो हुआ। तो बताओ अगर ऐसा लगता है कि उससे तुम लोगों को फ़ायदा है then we can do it later, ऐसा कर लेंगे, ठीक है? डिसाइड कर लो, नेक्स्ट टेस्ट में करते हैं वैसा। Okay, any other questions? नहीं, चलो ठीक है फिर। बट ओवरऑल आई एम वेरी हैप्पी विद द परफॉर्मेंस ऑफ एवरीवन। जिसको जिसको जो जो थे इश्यूज वो ज़रूर सॉर्ट करें, पढ़ो और नोट्स बनाओ। नोट्स बनाना बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। इफ़ यू हैव सीन what kind of questions were given in the test, they were all on discussions and slides only, so ऐसा कुछ दिक्कत नहीं था उसमें, right? तो anyways, I think we have just 10 minutes, so we'll just introduce this topic today, and let's start then for just the introduction part. So we have till now in rock slope technology, we have seen various aspects of geology that were basically affecting overall slope stability, right? We were seeing what kind of investigations we can do just by looking outside, from outside, what the slope, like the orientation of joints, the type of joints that are there, the type of discontinuities that are there. We also saw what kind of analysis we can do to find out what is inside, right? We saw geophysical investigations. We saw boring and coring type of applications, and from that how we can see other details. Before that, we also saw other parts of geological effects that are directly affecting the slope, right? So today we will be moving on from geology and we'll be moving to the main rock mechanics part. So rock and rock mass, their strength, what kind of material it is in that sense, what are its mechanical properties like its strength, its modulus, how much cohesion it has, how much friction it has, and various others rock mechanics and geomechanical properties, and how these are basically directly affecting our slope stability. So we will be now moving on to the geomechanics or rock mechanics part. Uh, so we'll be seeing many things in this, how these, what are the properties that are critical, which type of tests that are done, right? And uh, which are the critical properties that we require in order to basically mm, decide on what is the factor of safety or what is the stability of the slope. In what ways we can find these values, in sense that if they are available with us, or if they are not available, in if the rock samples are not available, how to estimate these values, what are the practical ways to do that. All these things will be covered in this section of geomechanical or rock mechanical studies. So today we'll be seeing what is like scale effect and how we have to be taking care of the scale of things, and how it is changing when we go from a perspective of a small sample of a rock, that is a cylindrical sample that we test in a lab, to a full slope, and how the perspective changes when we scale out or scale in that sense, right? Mm. So just to be very quick with this today, when we talk about scales, we always think that a property can be scaled up or scaled down. For example, a rock that has a strength of a material strength of suppose 20 megapascal, irrespective of its size, it will have a strength of 20 megapascal, right? That's what is a material property. But when we talk about a natural occurring material, so that doesn't always exhibit the same properties or same properties that are in a small scale as compared to when that are in large scale. The reason, it is no more the same material, and that's why when we go from a smaller scale to a larger scale, we have to take care that apart from the material being same, are there anything else that is being introduced. Very simply, it can have more discontinuities, right? It can have joints, it can have fractures, it can have any number of ingrown material or external intrusions. It can have other materials like basalt can have some other magmatic rock with that, or sandstone can have shale layers with that. Banded hematoid quartz is a good example, right? So there can be multiple reasons for that material to not remain same when we scale up, but we have to understand what's going on and how then we can analyze and what things to take care of. A simple example in terms of properties is this the difference between friction angle and internal angle of friction. So oftentimes confused when we talk about friction and internal angle of friction, what is the difference and all. We also had a question in our exam about internal angle of friction, right? So the internal friction basically deals with materials that are the intermaterial uh, resisting force that is built up when there is a deformation or a force exerted or a stress exerted on a material. Friction angle, we are very familiar in the sense that the friction basically is the force that resists any motion, right? Or the any interaction between similar material or different material that will be resisted if the external force is applied, right? So we are well aware of what a normal friction angle is. It generally goes to bulk properties of material, and it can be with respect to different disjoint material or other materials. It can be with itself, like between the joints, like in between the rock joints, or it can be with other materials, and the it is generally in response to either external force that is applied, right, or if there is a motion that is going on. Internal angular friction is something that is an inherent property of this material that is inside. So the friction or the force that is resisting the interparticulate motion. So if this material is just zoomed in sort of, and just the particulate matter is seen, and we are basically, if we are suppose putting force